Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to England once again and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel a number of times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, many different styles, but if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that they are just very solid all round. They like to try lots of different things and they always turn out pretty nicely in my experience. But the beer we're going to have a look at today is a style that I have had from them before, albeit not in quite some time if memory serves me correctly, and it does have a little bit of a twist within that style category as well, which is the reason that this one caught my eye. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to a little place called Buxton in the Peak District, almost right in the middle of England, just a little bit to the south of Sheffield and Manchester. And that of course means that we're going to have a look at yet another beer from Buxton Brewery. So this particular beer is called Brithop. It comes in at 6.8% ABV, and they're calling this one a modern British hop IPA. So, yeah, basically, this is a new IPA with English hops in it. There are 4 different varieties in this one, and I am quite looking forward to seeing what these have in store for us. I have had some of them once or twice before, but yeah, the 4 hops that are in this beer are not ones that you come across all that often. But yeah, a 6.8% English hopped IPA from Buxton Brewery in England. This should be quite interesting. Incidentally, this beer was released as part of the Tillfälligt sortiment through Systembolaget here in Sweden on the 27th, I think it was, of January 2023. So yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see what we have. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Buxton Brewery before, and we will hopefully add some more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer based on the geography tagging system. So just go up there, use the search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from your local area, they should pop up. Otherwise, you can go into the playlists and check out the beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the English playlist, and there are playlists there for many other countries as well. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and we'll chat a little bit about Buxton Brewery then. So, Buxton Brewery, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Buxton in the Peak District, a little bit to the south of Manchester and Sheffield, and this is actually a little bit of a spa town, but it's also in Derbyshire as well, which should point that out. But the brewery began with the first ever brew by Jeff Quinn back in 2009, so they are very well established. But Jeff had studied physics and had a background in engineering before he started up the brewery, and for a period of time he cuckoo brewed or gypsy brewed, whatever you want to call it, at another local microbrewery before getting his own facility up and running in January of 2010. But in the beginning, they were brewing 800 litre batches, and they've expanded gradually over the years. But today the brewery can be found on Staden Lane in Buxton in a 7,000 square foot space, and at full capacity these guys can produce over 60,000 litres of beer per month, and their beers are now exported worldwide. But the Buxton beers of course have won many accolades over the years, and this brewery has been consistently ranked in the world top 100 breweries according to Rate Beer, which is pretty impressive for an English brewery, I have to say, because it is a very American dominated site. But the local area, as I mentioned already, is called the Peak District, and it's famed for its water, and it's been revered since Roman times, and this town, Buxton, was apparently known as Aqua Arnimitae, which translates into English as the waters of the goddess of spring. So most of the beers that these guys do, or a number of them in the early days, were named after local geographical and geological features around the Buxton area, and the tower that used to be on many of the Buxton labels, but not anymore, was actually a folly tower that was called Solomon's Temple or Grinlow Tower, and it was built simply for decoration. But of course, yeah, Buxton just used the kind of simple text that you can see on the top of the can there. If you go and check out some of my older Buxton reviews, you'll see the tower logo that they used to have. But since 2013, Buxton have also had their tap house in the old courthouse on George Street in Buxton, and as of January 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 275 different kinds of beer, according to Untappd. But yeah, that is all I can really tell you about Buxton Brewery for the moment. It is one of the breweries that I do want to go and visit at some stage, actually. There are 2 breweries in the Peak District that I would really like to go and visit, actually, so we'll need to see about doing that at some point in the near future, maybe as an out and about video. Could be quite fun. But yeah, that, as I say, is everything I can tell you about Buxton Brewery for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, though, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on then and have a little look at the beer itself. So like I mentioned to you at the start of the video, this one is a 6.8% IPA. I'm not sure whether it's going to be more like a kind of American style IPA or whether it's going to be more of an English style IPA. We'll need to see what the malt base gives us. But yeah, it contains 4 different kinds of English hops. So the first one is Jester, and I believe all 4 of these were actually developed by Charles Farm, so I will point that out. So the first one is Jester. This gives you between 7 to 9% alpha acid, and it's supposed to have flavours of grapefruit, blackcurrants and lychees. There is Olisana as well, which I do believe I've had before. That's between 6 and 9% alpha acid, and it gives grapefruit, passion fruits and mangoes apparently. There's Mystic in there, which is between 4.5 and 6% alpha acid. This one gives blackcurrant, and then you've also got Harlequin, which is a daughter of Godiva, or Godiva, however we would say that. I'm pretty sure I've had Godiva before, but Harlequin comes in with a 9 to 12% alpha acid punch, and it's got passion fruit, peach and pineapple characteristics. So yeah, all of these actually sound quite interesting, but you know, Harlequin is probably the closest you're going to get out of these 4, maybe to some of the big American, Australian or New Zealand hops actually. So it's kind of impressive. It's quite interesting to see what's going on in England in terms of hops. But I remember we had one beer recently from well, a couple of years ago from Pang Brewery in Stockholm, and he used a number of English hops in that one as well, which was quite interesting. So yeah, quite a few things going on. But yeah, anyway, I'll just let you have a wee look at the artwork of this one before we open it up. As you can see, you've got the kind of Peak District forests and things there. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what the artwork on this one is supposed to symbolise, but it is pretty interesting. But there you can see Buxton Brewery. It's a black top on the can there, and I think I paid about 50 Swedish krona for this one. So that's about €5, maybe about £4.50 sterling, somewhere in the region of like $5.50 American, something like that. But yeah, 6.8% English IPA, this one. This, or English hopped IPA, we should say. This should be quite nice. Oh, it says an all British grown IPA showcasing some of the most exciting and aromatic new hops to be developed by British hop growers. So yeah, I don't know why they say British instead of English, because you know, I don't think in Scotland you can't really grow hops. It's just not the right climate. So yeah, these hops are English, I would say. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then and see what it's all about. So here we are. Oh, this does look pretty nice actually. So let me just put that there. So yeah, I have to say, this does look pretty nice actually. So before the head disappears on this one, we can say that it's poured with a finger and a third maybe of a frothy, I would say very slightly off-white head, but it's near enough perfect white, very slightly creamy coloured. But yeah, you can see the bubbles on that look lovely. Just look at that, lots of nice smaller bubbles there and kind of medium-sized ones going further up. But yeah, in terms of the appearance of this one, I would say it actually looks a little bit more like a kind of West Coast type IPA. To be honest with you, it looks a little bit more like a kind of old school West Coast one. It's got a little bit of that natural haze to it, but it's certainly not soupy and gloopy in the same way that a New England IPA would be. Of course, the more classic English IPA would have a colour kind of similar to this as well. It would be a little bit more akin to a West Coast IPA in terms of its appearance. But for me, the colour of this one, it's got a bit of a kind of light amber to it actually. So you've got that lovely kind of light ambery colour to it, one or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass there, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head, but overall it does look pretty nice, this one, I have to say. As I say, a little bit of a natural hazy character to it, and yeah, you've got just that lovely kind of rich, or like sort of rich light amber. But remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker coloured beer. But any barrel aging you do or any adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well. But when it comes to IPAs, you don't often really barrel age an IPA. It doesn't really kind of make sense to do it, to be honest with you. But yeah, as I say, appearance-wise, pretty much what you would expect from either a West Coast IPA or a more old-school English IPA. But yeah, we'll just need to see how we get on with this one then. So let's take a closer look at the aroma and see what this is going to have in store for us. It's quite interesting. Yeah, I think just going from the aroma of this one and the malt base, I think this is meant to be more of a kind of traditional English type IPA. We've really not reviewed many of these beers of English IPAs on the channel, like classic IPAs, if that makes sense. I think the last one I actually had, the last one I can remember in terms of English style IPAs, was actually brewed by Opigårds here in Sweden, the India Tribute. It was a lovely beer, by the way, one that I would recommend you try. I think that's probably the last one we've had in this category, but the first impression I get from the aroma of this beer, it's got that more kind of grainy, bready aroma to it. You can smell the sort of earthy and herbal character of the English hops in there, and you've also got little bits of fruity character too. So yeah, very different smelling IPA, this one, and this is kind of why I wanted to review it, because I knew it would be a little bit of a change from, you know, the New Englands that are all over the place these days. So yeah, aroma wise, this one is very, very nice. Yeah. So let's have a wee look at this. Yeah. Aroma wise, I think on the malty side of things, we'll start there first, as we always do. You can smell that kind of, it's got a sort of wholemeal, brown bready, bread crusty backbone to it. I'm just going to look actually and see, is this an all barley malt beer? No, it actually says it contains oats and wheat. That's kind of interesting. Of course, it's the New Englands that tend to contain oats and wheat, whereas West Coast IPAs tend to be more barley malt, and I think classic English IPAs tend to be more barley malt as well. So maybe we'll need to see when we taste it. But as I say, for me, I actually get quite a little bit of a kind of wholemeal, brown bread crusty backbone to this one. On top of that, there's that kind of more fluffy, fresh, brown bready character to it. Yeah, it really is quite brown bready and wholemeal bready and grainy in the malt base, this one. There's little elements of woody character in there. There's a little bit of a kind of crackery character to it. And yeah, so brown bread crust, a little bit of cracker, a little bit of wood, fluffy brown bread in there. And yeah, as I say, I do like how that goes together. Yeah, I want to say there's a little bit of Maris Otter in this one. There's just some of the notes that you get out of this beer, some of the kind of sweeter sides of that brown wholemeal bread just remind me of Maris Otter. So that's quite interesting. On top of that though, you do get a little bit of a kind of sweet caramelly note out of this one. So definitely a wee bit of that in the middle of the nose. A little bit of a kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy note, and also a wee bit of a kind of more McVitie's Digestive, biscuity type quality. So yeah, aroma wise, this is pretty nice. Yeah, aroma wise, I think this goes together really quite well in that sense. Yeah, I think the how do you say? I think the malty side of this beer is quite nice. You guys know, having watched the channel for a long time, that I like more. I love a good bit of sweet brown sugar in my beer. So this one for me is really quite interesting from that perspective. So yeah, I think a bit of Marisol, a little bit of butterscotch, a little bit of butter candy, a little bit of McVitie's digestive biscuit in here for sure. But of course, that's the malt base covered. Let's focus on the hoppy side of this beer then, because that's what this beer is all about, showing off English hops. So for me, the grain component in this beer is quite interesting. So yeah, there's a good little bit of that smooth earthiness in there, and there's a lot of herbal character. And for me, that is what kind of characterises English hops. And one thing for me as well, I think I've mentioned it on the channel a few times before, when it comes to English beer, if you like, I've never been a massive fan of cask ale, but I think it can work quite well, with porters and stouts. And I would say that generally speaking, I think because of the earthy and herbal character in English hops, I personally think that they're just better suited to darker beers. That of course might change if they're going to develop some more higher, some higher alpha acid hops now. So we'll need to see how that goes. But the more earthy and herbal English hop character that you get in the green component from English hops, for me, suits things like porters and stouts and that a little bit more. Bramlin's Cross, of course, is a lovely hop for the likes of barley wines and so on, and it works well in English milds actually. But for me, English beer, mild, porter, stout, barley wine, those are probably my favourite styles. I've never been so much into English golden ales and IPAs and stuff like that, the classic ones at least. So yeah, this is what I'm kind of thinking about when I smell the green component of these the hops in this particular beer, because it reminds me in a way of the German ones. Even when you've got the likes of Mandarina Bavaria, Hallertau Blanc, and there are other ones being developed now from Germany, they always have the green component in these hops always seems to be quite similar, and you notice the differences between the country. The German ones are quite bright and grassy, the English ones are always a little bit more kind of herbal and earthy, I find. So you definitely pick that up in the aroma of this beer for sure. But there's a little bit of a floral character in there, a little bit of a wetter grassiness as well, and then you start to get all the fruity notes out of this beer. So what was it? Jester, Mystic, Olisana, and the other one's gone right out of my head. What was that again? It was the last one was Harlequin. So yeah, it's interesting. So yeah, the fruity side of this beer for me is quite interesting. I do get a lot of blackcurrant out of this. And which of the three was it that had the blackcurrant again? So it was Jester, Jester and Mystic are supposed to give you kind of blackcurrant. So you get a lot of blackcurrant out of that. As I always say, when it comes to new hops in this, I like learning about different ingredients that go into beer. And I don't know English hops other than the Kent Goldings and the Bramling's Crosses and the Fuggles as well. I don't like Fuggles other than RISs and stuff like that. But I don't know English hops that well, and that's why this beer caught my eye. So yeah, you've got that lovely, you do get a lot of blackcurrant in this one, and I am getting a little bit of like an apricot-y, mango-y type quality, which I'm guessing is from the Harlequin in this one, but I'm not getting so much in the way of like passion fruit and things. Maybe just a little touch of like a dry passion fruit underneath. So you have dry passion fruit, bit of mango, apricot as well, but then yeah, a lot of blackcurrant for me. So yeah, this is quite interesting. The notes I have on Jester say you're supposed to get a little bit of lychee out of it, which is kind of interesting. I'm not getting so much of that in the aroma, I have to say, but yeah, a lot of blackcurrant, and then yeah, a little bit of, the more I smell this beer, I do get like a kind of dry passion fruit. It's more, the passion fruit you get out of this is more like what you would get in a fruited sour or something like that, which is interesting. Quite dry and quite juicy rather than being more oily. But yeah, mango, apricot for sure, and then a wee bit of definitely a wee touch of passion fruit in the background, and lots of blackcurrant for me. It's interesting aroma that. It really gets more wet and oily the more that you smell of it. So as I always say, take a wee bit of time to just enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it, especially something like this, which is a wee bit more kind of quirky and unusual because of these English hops. So yeah, this should be nice. So let's have a wee look at this beer then. This one is the Brithop, a 6.8% IPA from Buxton Brewery in Buxton, Derbyshire in the Peak District in England. Slàinte, skål, cheers. That's nice, actually. I'm just trying to figure out from it. It definitely has that more kind of English um, IPA type quality to it. I mean, it's more grainy and bready, of course, to start off with, and of course, then you've got what I was talking about with the English hops, that kind of inherent earthy herbal character to it. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together though is very, very nice actually. This is one that will grow on me, I think. So I will say it's just overall, as I say, quite a bready, kind of more grainy IPA, but it does have a wee bit of sweetness in there. You've got a smooth green component to this one, which we'll come back to. But then you've also got a nice kind of oily, fruity character to this one. But it really is more it is a bit more like a kind of old school English style IPA, this one. So that's worth bearing in mind. But let's try and break this beer down for you and just describe what's going on a wee bit more in depth. But I will say, this is nice. This is nice. I mean, obviously, Buxton Brewery do have more modern IPAs that will kind of give you a bit more punch and things. But this has to be kind of rated for what it is, if that makes sense. You have to, when you go into this beer, you have to think about what they're actually trying to do with it. Because when I had a wee look on Untappd earlier, I think it only had like a 3.5 or something like that. But and of course, everyone that goes into this thinking it's an IPA, they're wanting like a New England hazy, don't realise what the beer actually is, which is a bit of a shame. You get that quite often with more traditional beers, I think. But yeah, let's actually have a wee look at this though. So yeah, for me, the malty base, then we'll start in the middle third of the palate as we always do. The backbone of the beer, you can feel that nice little bit of a kind of fresh brown bready bread crust. So yeah, nice little bit fresh brown bready bread crust toward the front of that. Toward the front of that middle third of your palate, you'll get a little. I get a little touch of woody character out of it, which is quite nice. Yeah, a little bit of woodiness in there, a little bit of cracker above it, and yeah, I think that goes together. So yeah, nice brown bread crust, a little bit of woody element in there, a wee bit of a crackery note. So yeah. So yeah, that is pretty nice. And above that though, above that layer, you start to get a more kind of thick and dense white bready, brown bready layer out of this actually. So to me, it's like a big kind of thick wholemeal brown bread. It's got a little bit of sweetness to it as well, which I do quite like. On top of the on top of that, you've got a more I would say you do have a little bit of a more kind of white bready. There is a slight white bready layer to this one, which is interesting. And like I said earlier, this beer does contain a bit of wheat, so you can feel the wheat. I think the wheat is giving you that, and you can feel the slightly higher density of the wheat in there as well. So I think it's the wheat that's giving you that kind of white bready layer, and you can feel a little bit of the oaty smoothness just as you go down the middle line of the tongue, and then the brown sugary characters in this beer sit on top of that, and it makes sense. I do think there's a bit of Maris Otter in this. Just the sweetness of the brown bread and some of the brown sugary notes that are coming out of this would make me, do convince me there's a bit of Maris Otter in this, and when it's English hops in there, it would kind of make sense to use one of the more famous English malts. So, yeah. Above the oaty character, you've got a little circle there in the middle of your palate. So you've got the base in there. So I'm trying to think which way do we go up or do we go down. Let's just start in the middle of the palate. So as I say, you've got that little circle there. In the dead centre of your palate, there's a wee bit of a sweet caramelly note. There's a wee bit of a more kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing. And then it's a little bit more, it's got a little bit of a more kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity character coming out of it as well. So yeah, I like how that goes together. It is very nice. Yeah, the way that goes together is really, really nice. Malt base in this is good, and I think it's definitely more like a classic English IPA type malt base, this one. But the oats and the wheat do smoothen it all out, I think, and give it a wee bit more density, so that's interesting. But yeah, that's the middle third of the palate in this beer. Back third of the palate then, quickly. So the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of a bready build up in there, kind of more like a sweet wholemeal brown bready character, as you would expect. But then the base of that back third of your palate, you've got a little bit of a more kind of, I would say you've got a little bit of a more kind of brown bready, bread crusty sort of thing in there. Then you have a little bit of a more, above that, you have a wee bit of a more, you've got a little bit of a crackery note, I think, like Jacob's cream cracker. Then you get that more tall, airy, wholemeal brown bready character coming out of it. You can feel that layer is just more airy, and then you can feel just a little touch of wheaty bitiness above all of that bread on the back of the palate. Then above everything else, you've got the more airy, yeasty type characters coming out of this one. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together in that sense is really, really nice. But yeah, the malty and yeasty side of this one is more classic English IPA style. So yeah, back third of the palate, you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you come further forward, it just condenses down and squashes together that wee bit more. But yeah, like I say, it does go together pretty nicely, I have to say. Yeah, interesting stuff for sure. Let's go on to the hoppy side of things then. So back corners of the palate, you do have a little bit of that smooth earthiness in there. And as you come further forward, the earthiness does spread a little bit, and then you get a little touch of herbal character. And as you push toward the kind of front corners of the tongue, you do start to get a little bit more of a kind of floral aromaticity out of the beer. And it's interesting to see English hops this floral, because the beer has a little bit of depth to it in that sense from the hoppy character. But round the front curve of the tongue, it's definitely lighter and grassy. And the grassy character, even that has a little bit of herbal note to it. But remember, when you're talking about IPAs, there are three types of hoppings that you can use. Early edition hopping within the first hour of the wort boil, that'll give you mostly your bitterness. Late edition hopping within the last half hour of the wort boil or so, that'll give you a little bit of bitterness, but mainly flavour and aroma. And then dry hopping afterwards gives you pretty much all flavour and aroma. So yeah, with this beer, I think it's using mainly late edition and dry hopping potentially. So yeah, you can feel that because it's not overly deep and dank and things like that. So that's worth bearing in mind with this one. It is more of a kind of brighter green component that you get out of this beer, which is the indicator of late edition and dry hopping. You haven't got so much dankness to this this particular beer. But yeah, it's interesting, this one for sure. So yeah, in terms of the fruity, I think we said what we need to about the green component of this one, and I will say the earthiness and herbal character comes out a wee bit more later on. But in terms of the fruity side of the beer, we'll look at the front third of your palate now. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of a bready build up in there. You can feel that, and that does go together quite nicely. But the base of the base of that front third of your palate, you can feel there's a nice little bit of a bread crusty note in there, some smooth white bready character as well, which is great. So yeah, a little bit of bread crust, smooth, kind of brown, white bready character, and then above that you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy, fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. So let's focus on that. At the back of that front third of your palate, I do actually get a little bit of grapefruit out of this one, and that, which one was that again? The grapefruit was the Olisana. So I do get a little touch of grapefruit. And as you move further forward, yeah, you get a little bit of passion fruit. So that was the Harlequin and the Olisana as well. Okay, so you are getting a little bit of this. But as you move toward the middle of that front third of your palate, there's a little bit of mango in there and a little bit of like apricot. And I think that's mostly the Harlequin. that's giving you that. But the Harlequin is supposed to give you a wee bit of peach and pineapple as well. I could see a little bit of peach in this one actually. It does have a wee bit of that kind of more pungent peach flavour to it, so I could agree with that. I could agree there's a little bit of peach in this one. Pineapple though, not so much. I'd say I'm getting mainly grapefruit, passion fruit, apricot underneath, and a bit of mango, and then yeah, a wee bit of peachy flavour in there. So yeah, that's the Olisana. And the Jester apparently is going to give you a bit of grapefruit as well, so that kind of makes sense. But yeah, as you move, yeah, Olisana is going to give you the mango too and the passion fruit. So yeah, I think it's mainly Harlequin, Jester, and the Olisana that you're kind of getting in the back part of your the back half of this front third of your palate. But definitely as you move further forward, you can feel as you go into the front half of the front third of your palate, it is more about the kind of black curranty type flavour, which is interesting. Yeah, it really gives you more of that kind of black curranty type flavour in the kind of front third of your palate there. So that's going to be the Mystic in this one, and also the Jester that are giving you that. Jester incidentally is supposed to give you a little bit of lychee, which in fairness, behind the very front tip of the tongue, I can see that a little bit. Let's see, I've got the 4 hops, the notes on the 4 hops there, sitting on the computer, because I just want to learn about these hops and try and remember what they're about going forward. I like to, see how the hops kind of come out, because obviously if you try hops in different styles and things, they can behave differently and stuff. So I would like to get a better knowledge of these English hops actually, if they're going to be a bit more widely used. But yeah, you can feel that. You can feel that in this one. This is nice, as I say, more blackcurrant and sort of lychee notes on the front half of the front third of your palate, and then on the back half, you get the grapefruit, you get the passion fruit. Can definitely see a little bit of peach in there, and you've got a wee bit of like mango and stuff underneath too, and a bit of apricot. But yeah, the way this beer goes together, I think, is really quite nice. So it gets a thumbs up from me. I think this has been quite an interesting one to taste and just take it as a learning experience. So yeah, stylistically, it's got the English IPA malt base to it. It's attempting to do the more American type fruit sort of thing, but yeah, it really does come across as more of an English IPA, but it has, as I say, it's got a bit of that New England smoothness to it as well. That's also a fair assessment, I would think. But yeah, let's round off then with a wee look at the mouthfeel on that note. So yeah, for me, pushing the top end of mid-bodied, the carbonation is very, very smooth. It's got a nice kind of oily mouthfeel to it as well, actually. So yeah, a nice kind of oily mouthfeel to it. And then, yeah, in the malt base, you've got a lot of smoothness, a bit of graininess in there as well, but quite a bit of smoothness and sweetness as well. Like we said, this beer gets thicker, I think, the more that you drink of it. In terms of the IBUs, I think this is more like a long New England IPA type IBUs, like a sort of 30-ish, but maybe it could push a little bit higher than that the more that you drink of it, to be honest. And then you've got that lovely kind of oily, fruity character in there. So a wee bit of a more pungent tropical fruit, and also some of the more kind of oily things going on in this one too. So yeah, this is really quite interesting in that sense, actually. I do like how this goes together. So gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah. The Brithop IPA at 6.8% from Buxton Brewery. Really enjoyed this one. I like beers like this that can teach you things, and this will show you a few things about the English hops. As I say, we had Jester, Olisana, Mystic, and Harlequin in here, and I'd had Olisana and Mystic before. Jester, and I think I have had Jester at one point or two, but Harlequin is definitely a new one for me. So yeah, exciting things going on over in England. But let's leave it at that for this one. This was a really interesting beer, and I hope you guys enjoyed my take on it. So as always, let me know your own thoughts in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Buxton Brewery. We will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the future, but in the meantime, check out my social media, check out their social media, and I'll see you guys very soon. Brithop IPA from Buxton Brewery in Buxton, Derbyshire, in the Peak District, in the middle of England. Slàinte, skål, and cheers.